And welcome again to the two Jacks. It's Jack the Insider, Peter Hoysted, coming here from you today at Sydney, and in Hong Kong, we've got the other Jack, Hong Kong Jack. How are you?
G'day, Jack.
Now in Hong Kong, mate, you've got some problems. Zero COVID is not working out.
No, it doesn't seem to be going terribly well. I think we had 6,000 cases yesterday. And of course, no one knows whether that's actually an accurate figure at the moment because the testing system is a little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But given that we've had 20,000 cases in total up to date from the whole virus, this is a very, very big number.
So let's say 20,000 up to January 2022, and now you're getting 5,000-6,000 cases per day.
Yeah, and going up.
And just by way of explanation, New South Wales population is almost on a par with the Hong Kong population.
Yeah, 7-odd million. Yeah.
So, when we think about our cases here, when we got up to good 40,000 per day, right in January in 2022, similar sort of demographics or similar sort of population figure anyway to reference that from. But yeah, from very low numbers to hitting 5,000 to 6,000 cases per day. We're going to actually have a proper, deeper look at that later in the program, and Jack will have some messages on what's happening because clearly the government needs to respond to that. But we're going to move over to the Ukraine, and things might have calmed down a little bit, Jack, in the Ukraine.
They may have, yes. It's a 50-50 call on whether they're calmed down or it's the lull before the storm.
Yeah, look, we did see. We have seen talk, at least, of troop stand-downs or Russian troop stand-downs on the border there. The NATO folk are not entirely convinced. So we're not entirely sure what's going on in terms of, is it another Putin game of chess or are these sort of major threats coming essentially from NATO and also the United States working? What's your guess?
Oh, gee, that's a hard one to call. I thought it might have been the German Chancellor finally got his chance at the big table.
He did have a go on the big table. It's a lovely thing, isn't it, the big table? It looked like, I heard it described as being like 3 huge cricket stumps with a table on the top of it, like a big set of bales that goes right over it. It's a table for a good 20 people. And when you go and meet Vladimir, you're right down the other end. You'd have to use semaphore to be heard.
There's an even better table that Vladimir took his briefing from the foreign secretary,
Sergei Lavrov.
Yeah, it's a ripper table.
Oh yeah, it's a good table for a good 30 or 40.
I thought it looked a little bit like the table they paint the Last Supper on. But that would only have worked if Jesus had 120 apostles rather than 12.
The big table is a very strange sort of Russian cultural edifice, I think, or maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe Vlad's got COVID, or a bit of bad BO.
Very bad breath, But more seriously about Ukraine, I mean, what's the best answer? Is it? I've been reading various opinions on this, and some people will say, well, look, we really just need to understand that there is a Russian-speaking part of Ukraine and a non-Russian speaking part of Ukraine, and maybe the best solution is, dare we say it, a two-state solution, that there is a Russian Ukraine and a non-Russian Ukraine, and the Russian Ukraine comes back under the Russian
back to the motherland.
To the motherland. Yeah.
Look,
what do you think about that?
No, I don't like that idea at all. I mean, these two-state solutions are invariably poor, and we've still got a massive potential flashpoint in Korea over the two-state type solutions there. The other thing I think is really important is that someone really needs to draw a line in the sand with Putin. You know, I think it's the only thing he respects. Any form of weakness he will exploit, and really, it's about time. You know, we've talked about this in other programs where he has benefited from fairly weak isolationist policies from the last two presidents, in Trump and Obama. And I like this idea. I do like the approach of Sleepy Joe, just saying, mate, you do it, and we'll deal with you. And and really, it's just been, that sort of hard hand in the air type diplomacy, saying you cross these lines and you are in big trouble.
Well, that's what Obama was famous for. He's always drawing lines in the sand.
Oh, yeah, but that's true. He was constantly moving them. But no, I think the only thing that Vladimir Putin respects is a hard line, a hard diplomatic line that says we will only go so far with diplomacy, and if you want to keep creeping over the line, then understand you will get slapped. It's a big bold move.
A little bit hard to do that post the debacle in Afghanistan.
Look, we have seen a lot of conservative commentary. First, we were told that Joe Biden was demented and weak and all these sorts of things, and then we were told he'd been too strong, throwing Americans again into a sort of unwinnable war. But I think certainly the announcement from Biden to put troops on the ground in a training and advisory position really changed things greatly. We have had firmer responses from Germany too, and a lot of Russian economic infrastructure has been put at risk too. So, I just get I have that very strong view that when you deal with someone like Putin, who's been getting away with murder, literally getting away with murder for a very, very long time, that the only way to deal with him is in a very hard way.
I think that's probably right. The Germans' problem is that, for all that you say that Angela Merkel was the smartest woman in the room, smartest person in the room, their problem with Russia was of her doing. By shutting down the nuclear industry and relying on Russian gas, she's made herself strategically weaker in a very significant way, made her country strategically weaker.
Yeah, but look, we're not entirely sure but Biden has advised us, Sleepy Joe has advised us that the second oil pipeline to come into Germany, where Nord Stream will not proceed if Putin invades, and I suspect that's a significant economic factor on making Putin waver. At least he's at that wavering stage. I think we can say that. Whether he proceeds or not is really in the lap of the gods, but he has come up against a bullock this time, and he's been allowed to get away with a lot of things before, particularly in Syria. Now, what I'm thinking of there in Syria, that was the Barack Obama "don't cross that line," and then he did, and nothing happened. And that's the great failure when you're dealing with all of these characters. I think you've got to be pretty hard with them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's these foreign relation things are, they're not academic exercises.
It's deadly serious stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think Putin has been allowed to get away with a great deal. Some of his behaviour, really, when we're talking about British citizens being murdered as a result of Russian agents. We're talking about adventurism in the Caucasus, and that's all been allowed to go ahead. Support for the regime in Syria, which led to this sort of flood of refugees, a major contributing factor to this flood of refugees into Europe from Syria. These things were allowed to go on, and Putin was sort of sitting back there almost like the puppet master. And
few of those, a modest number of those were actually from Syria, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that the refugees aren't all from Syria, but you do have over 1.5 million people displaced, some internally, some externally in Syria,
Mm.
and that really did sort of kick off a great deal of political upset throughout Europe, and really I saw sort of Putin as being the one who sat back and basically was running that.
Yeah, with
So he's
with
been
some
getting
help
away with
from
stuff for a long time.
Angela Merkel saying welcome, 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 to
Yeah,
wherever
and
you're
Vladimir
from.
and Vladimir walking in with a dog because he knew she was frightened of dogs and things like that. So when I say she was the smartest woman in the room, she probably wasn't the most cunning and wasn't the most awful
Mm.
person in the room. Definitely not.
And
Vladimir needs hard minds and hard words, and he
mm,
seems to respect those.
needs someone that's cunning on the other side of the long table.
Yeah, yeah, and good with semaphore. So
I think
you
they
can
could
be
use it.
understood.
When I first saw it, I thought you could probably use that table to play table tennis, except that the drop
Oh,
shot
too
would
long.
it'd be all over the drop shot,
It
wouldn't
wouldn't
it?
be able to, you could actually roll the arm over and play a bit of indoor cricket on it.
You probably could.
The one with Sergei Lavrov there, that was a huge table.
It is.
Yeah, there's something going on there with Vlad because no one likes to get all that close to him. I
No, they
did see
don't.
that wonderful piece of footage, and I'm not quite sure where it was, but it was not quite sure what it was about. But we do have sort of a collection of Russian citizens sort of posing for a photograph, and a young bloke sort of, Vlad's in the second row, and a young bloke just sort of stands, but and he's quite tall, so he sort of covers Vladimir's face, and all of a sudden there's a rough hand that grabs him away and puts him somewhere else in the slot. So, and then they move a woman in front so Vladimir's face can be seen, and Vlad just
What's
puts on the smile.
what's the crime? Lesser majesty, isn't it?
The young lad who got moved away, he was very, very grateful that just a bit of rough housing on his arm was all it took. He realised his error too late. And speaking of which, Jack, speaking of realising errors too late, we do have Prince Andrew settling his case because why would that be? You're a lawyer, Jack. Why would he settle rather than go ahead?
Well,
with a trial?
if you were his lawyer, one of the reasons why you'd be looking to settle the case is that you have a client who you couldn't possibly put in the witness box. Because if the very smart Emily Matlas can reduce him to a gibbering wreck, a hard-nosed lawyer would have a field day with him.
Oh,
But the thing I like most about the Emily Matlas interview was that he's reported to have walked out and said to his aides that I think that went pretty well.
yeah, it was terrific. How'd it look to you guys? I feel good about it. That was the BBC interview, which was widely considered a train wreck, and really that's saying a great deal about a lot of train wrecks.
But every litigation lawyer's had a client who that you can run the case up until the point where they've got to go in the witness box, and you can't run it any further.
And the cross-examination, as you say, would be spectacular.
The other thing to note about it is in these situations, say you sue the other driver in a motor car accident, or you've got a client who a doctor's done wrong by, so you sue the doctor, and ostensibly the other lawyer's client is the other driver or the doctor, but that's only partly true. In reality, the real client on the other end is the insurer who's standing behind the driver or the doctor.
Yes. Well, they've got the checkbook.
They've got the checkbook. They're going to make the call. In this situation, my view is that the real defendant in this case was Queen Elizabeth II, because she's the person who's going to have to pull the checkbook out of the drawer and write her name on the bottom of it.
Yes. Yes.
because I don't think he's got the 10 million quid or whatever it is to settle the case. So.
It's a big amount, and some of it has been set aside for victims of sexual abuse and human trafficking.
I wondered whether that part of the settlement was in part to give the Queen some cover so she can say she wrote a cheque for a charity rather than a cheque for the person who's suing.
Well, she doesn't pay tax, mate, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, no, no, it's not. It's not
more
your
PR exercise.
Yeah, it's more your PR exercise. Yeah, the other reason it had to be settled was because it's doing untold damage to the monarchy. So, and you know, and the best thing that can happen to him is that he takes up a new hobby. You know, wasn't one of his predecessors big on collecting stamps or something? You know,
well, they're on them a lot, so it makes it easier. Yeah,
that's right.
There's me. Look, the other thing
they could perhaps pick up a first edition Novak Djokovic stamp from Serbia.
Yes, he's on the face of them. Yeah, the Queen's on quite a lot of them. Look, the other thing is, of course, that there's an FBI investigation ongoing into all of this, and. There was a particularly amusing tweet from the FBI. You don't get very funny tweets from the FBI normally, but this was kind of very funny. That when Prince Philip when there was a great deal of mourning going on over Prince Philip, Prince Andrew, and it seemed to be sort of doing the senior family member thing and was out talking to the media and saying how the Queen was feeling and how the rest of the family was going and so forth. And the FBI tweet was, "Oh, he's giving press conferences now," because they've made it very clear that they would like to have a word in his shell, like, and perhaps if he'd be so kind as to give them a statement. They'll send over a couple of agents, can be done in the UK, can be done in the US, and never received a satisfactory response from it.
My guess is that the FBI investigation won't go very far, and that's because the list of people other suspects, who would be very long and very distinguished.
Yes, well, and this is all, of course, relating to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Who was deceased. His former partner in crime has just been convicted without saying really a word other than she was innocent, and she's due to be sentenced. She's due to be sentenced in the next month or so, I think, and
I think she is.
And she'll be looking at a nice old stretch, I dare say. But she's remains stum. And while she remains stum, that would be Andrew's best defence. But it also means that he probably can't just pop over to the US for a game of golf.
No, I don't think he'll be going to the US in a hurry.
No. In fact, what will become of him, mate? Is he going to be sort of one of those spooky royals who just sits in an old castle and mutters to himself over a brandy?
That's probably right. He's very keen on golf, and I think, well, perhaps that was because he was president of the Royal Nation or something. You know, he likes these titles and little bits of importance.
Hasn't got any of them anymore.
No,
they're all gone.
No. So perhaps you have to take up something. Look, the nicest assessment I saw of him, it was from a chap.
Well, that'd be his own, wouldn't it?
Well, exactly. It's of his own. A chap who worked with him who, in that wonderful British way of saying a fair bit without saying very much, said of Andrew that he had a very generous assessment of his own abilities and importance.
And look, I think we may not be discussing him in future because I think he's due to disappear from public view for a very, very long time, if not life.
Yeah, to collect stamps.
But meanwhile, his brother's got a bit of a problem.
He has. Brother's got a big problem.
Good old Charlie.
Yeah, he has.
Heir to the throne.
There are suggestions that his foundation, one of his foundations, was trafficking in British honours. That is, taking a sling in return for making someone a sir. It's my understanding that there's been trafficking in British honours for as long as there have been
British honours.
Yes, but it's generally done by politicians rather than by
Yes.
the royals, or for a long time it's been done by politicians rather than for the royals themselves. But
I think there was a Saudi businessman who
with the
has actually denied everything.
with a name about 3 meters long.
Yeah, with a name about 3 meters long. That's not going to look any better for mine with a sir in front of it. It's not going to look any more impressive anyway. And he's denied all these claims. But basically,
and besides everyone from over there is a prince anyway. You know.
Well, you just pop an EL in front of your name, and that gives you some sort of link to aristocracy, I think. So a bit of concern there. Must quickly say that Prince Charles is a net money maker through his various charities and so forth, and he's sort of almost cottage industry style of creating goods and produce and so forth from his many farms and on his many estates actually makes money. He's one of the few royals who doesn't suck up a great deal from the public purse. He's an old hippie, of course, so it makes sense, you know.
Well, does he still talk to the plants?
Yeah. I think he has mainly people to talk to the plants for him. He pays does. People. Yeah. So you know.
Anyway, one of his chaps has been given the push, and apparently this time it's the third time this bloke's been given the push, and he keeps coming back.
People. They're very forgiving people, the Windsors.
But this time apparently it's permanent.
That's it. Yeah. Strike 3 and you're out.
He won't come back.
But not quite the same.
The bloke who's been given the push is famous, apparently, as when Prince Charles had a polo injury and his arm in a sling. This was the chap who used to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush for Prince Charles, so he could.
They're very close. Very, very close. But we still have some unresolved scandal at CNN with CNN versus the Cuomos, that very powerful Democratic family in New York.
We do. The consenting party with Jeffrey Zucker has also been given the woman with whom he was having an affair has also been given the push by CNN.
How does that work?
I don't know. It's all getting hard to follow there. It seems to be.
There'd be lawyers at 20 paces there, wouldn't they? They've given her the shove for being a consensual partner in an affair.
Well, the new head of CNN says that they had an external law firm interview 40-odd people and looked at 100 pages of transcripts or 100,000 pages of transcripts of text or whatever it was, and that a number of people, Chris Cuomo, Jeffrey Zucker, and this woman whose name escapes me, the consenting party, have all breached the standards of CNN.
Oh.
Yes, I didn't know they had them either.
Would that be a contractual thing? Would they actually say these are our standards and you must follow them?
I think the lawyers would be saying, if you want to give her the push out the door, this is what you've got to say to her. More to the point. Anyway, it gets even. This is looking like a pitch for a new Dallas or Dynasty type series, really, isn't it? With all of the, with Jeff Zucker playing JR and the new bloke playing Cliff, in Dallas, with who wins the battle. Meanwhile, Fredo, as he objects to being called, the younger Cuomo,
Fredo from The Godfather.
The sort of dim and hopeless younger brother, elder brother actually, wasn't it? He's alleged to have pestered an intern for sex, not when he was at CNN, but when he was at the ABC beforehand, when he was starring in some show there. She says, or more precisely, her lawyer says, that he invited this intern up. She was a temporary intern up for lunch in his office. And when he got there, there was no lunch, but he pestered her for sex.